And welcome to the dialogues.
Hi, thank you for having me.
It's nice to see you. Interestingly, I think there's been a bit of a theme lately with me talking to type 1 diabetics who've kind of, I guess, taken that I don't know whether you call it an opportunity or what you call it, but have ended up working in the world because of a diagnosis that they have. Certainly something that I've done, and it's great to connect with people doing that. I think it's sort of like, I'm trying to think of another way to put this, but it's a little bit like making, what is it, making lemonade out of lemons, in a sense.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was a senior in high school when I was diagnosed 3 months before I was set to graduate. So that changed plans a lot. I was applying everywhere. Everywhere I applied for school, I was applying as a general bio major. Always loved science, always something I was super interested in. Didn't know if I wanted to do nursing, PA, whatever avenue I wanted to go in. I wasn't too sure just yet. And then I got this diagnosis. And then my parents also got a divorce. It kind of just threw a wrench in kind of all my plans. So I was just like, well, I'm now in this new financial situation that I didn't see myself in. College is super expensive that I had no idea about. And now I had this trying to navigate this new chronic condition. So when I was diagnosed, my parents kind of we sat down and we were like, the best thing for me right now is to stay home. And I ended up going to community college, and it was like the best thing to ever happen to me. I was probably kicking and screaming the entire time because I worked really hard in school. Always kind of saw myself going to like a big name university, and where all my friends were going. And I went to community college, and now I'm like, community college was the best thing. I saved so much money in my student loans. I got really great attention for all my science classes. And the community college I went to is like one of the only ones in the state of New Jersey that had a nutritional science major. Had I not done any of this stuff, I never would have found a nutrition major, probably wouldn't even be in like this realm of work that I am in now.
Mm.
So sometimes I believe like the universe works in very like mysterious ways, and we don't kind of know what that plan is until everything kind of just starts unfolding, and we look back and see that later on.
Very serendipitous. Do you remember? I mean, it sounds
Yeah.
like there was a lot going on at the time of your diagnosis. Do you remember
Mhm.
what it felt like what the experience was like, the kind of the period around
Mhm.
finding out about the diagnosis, and then just kind of how you managed it mentally, what was happening for you?
There was a lot going on at that time of my life. I was taking college level classes in my high school year, so I thought I was just stressed out. I thought all of my symptoms were related to me studying for like my AP exams and college applications, all of that stuff. So me not sleeping, me having constant headaches, all of like those symptoms I thought was stress. And ultimately, once I was diagnosed, I my care team didn't even know whether or not to treat me as a kid or as an adult, because I literally turned 18 2 weeks earlier. So I sat in the ER for about 12 hours. I was there like all day long. And they were pretty much arguing with like adult endocrinology and pediatric endocrinology about who was going to take care of me. Because so I ended up getting admitted into a pediatric floor, but was seen by adult endocrinology. And I never want to say like there's a good time to have a diagnosis of diabetes, but I'm thankful that I got to take all of the weight of it, because my parents were a mess.
Mm.
Like my mom was crying, she was blaming herself, like she was like shaking her hand, trying to give me an injection. And I was
Wow.
just like, just let me do it. Just let me do it.
Yeah.
And that's what I did. I just kind of dove right in and just started doing it. I didn't know what I was doing,
Mm.
but I was just like, I felt like it was from like the very beginning. I just felt like it was something that I needed to do and not let my parents carry that burden for me.
I really feel for parents, actually. I do feel like it must
Mhm.
be even more challenging to be a parent. And I think your parents are probably lucky because, had you got the diagnosis 10 years early, which is common, right? Like for 8-year-olds, parents who have to manage their kids, it's almost worse than actually being the kid with the condition.
Mm-hmm. I give so much credit to families, parents, caregivers,
Yeah,
anyone involved, because they're an extension of us. They're the ones that are still up late checking Dexcom just as much as we are. So I definitely give them a lot of credit for all that they do for us.
totally. Um, so you took responsibility for managing it yourself as an 18-year-old.
Mhm.
Did it impact your life in any ways in terms of, socially or mentally, or, do you remember, like, were there any changes for you? I mean, for me, I was 30 when I got diagnosed, and I pretty much just got on with it. Like, I didn't really,
Mhm.
it was like I just started injecting and I didn't really think about it too much. I mean, obviously you're trying to avoid hypos and hypers, but other than that, I didn't kind of have too much impact socially or mentally at the time. Do you remember if there was much
Yeah.
impact in that sense?
So I never cared about nutrition ever. I had like the typical teenager type of diet where I was eating fast food. I like my example I always give my clients is my high school used to have a bagel sale every morning. And I would always buy 2 bagels every morning because it was like $2. And then I would grab a handful of like the little butter packets. So I
Mm,
would eat 2 bagels and like probably like a stick of butter every day. And then
okay.
I would go home and like eat whatever my mom was like cooking and whatever. So, going from like, I don't really care what I'm eating to now like, oh my God, I actually have to know what a carb is
Yeah.
and know, how to count them and measure things. And it was overwhelming to say the least. Um, and I know my mom felt overwhelmed. I think one of the first foods she made was like a red sauce. And she's like counting up all the carbs of like the tomatoes, the tomato paste, the onion, the garlic, the this, the that. And she gets like some like crazy, crazy number for like a big pot of sauce. And she goes, I think this whole thing has like 1,000 grams of carbs. And I was just like, so how much is like a cup? And she's just like, I don't know how many cups are in this whole pot. So I'm like, well, I'm not dosing for like, 1,000 grams of carbs. Uh, like, so we both kind of were just like trying to put the pieces together as we went. And the more and more I met actually like with my care team, their advice, starts out very innocently. Like, okay, eat 30 to 40 grams of carbs for breakfast, eat
Mm,
60 grams of carbs for lunch and dinner, make sure it has the protein, it has the this, it has the that. And I started becoming obsessed. Like I'm a people pleaser. I love for everyone to be happy and I never want to make things like complicated for anyone. I never want to be like a hassle or anything. So I would take everything that like anything my educator or dietitian said, I would take it literally. Like
mm,
she goes, okay, you have to have an egg for breakfast. I would literally have an egg for breakfast. I would like
right.
not eat anything that they said I could or couldn't eat. And it just kind of morphed into something a lot bigger
Mm.
without me really realizing what was happening at the time.
So you became what's the word, compliant, but like overly compliant, excessively compliant? Would you say that?
Mhm. Yeah, like, and my behaviors were commended because I was meeting all of like my thresholds. Like I was meeting my A1C goal. They loved the way my blood sugars looked, but my mentality wasn't there. I was doing it because I didn't think I could, eat anything else. I thought that, this is good, so I'm going to continue down this road because it's making everyone on my care team happy for me. But on the inside, I was completely and utterly miserable.
And so when did you realize that? When did you realize that like the excessive compliance was making you miserable? How long did it take you for that light bulb to go on?
Years. It
Really?
wasn't until I graduated college that I realized something was wrong. And I had realized something was wrong was there's a family style Portuguese restaurant that like we always go to whenever it's like some type of like
Nice.
celebration.
Yeah.
And we went to this restaurant after it was like for my graduation dinner. So we go to this place and again it's family style. So like you go there and like you get food for a couple meals.
Mm.
And I wasn't eating anything other than grilled chicken, broccoli, almonds, little baby apples. I wouldn't allow myself to have the big apples because they had too many carbs. And so we go to this restaurant that has, they're known for like their garlic chicken. So I had garlic chicken with like a big plate of rice and veggies and like delicious Portuguese bread that like you dip in the sauce. And I just went to town and I ate all of it. And the plate was made for at least 4 people and I ate it all myself. And I remember and that's not like the first occurrence of like me like doing this like overeating cycle from like restricting, but I remember my sister looked at me and she was just like, are you okay? And like I feel like she meant it like, being like a Joshy like older sister, like you're gross type of thing. But for me, I was just like, actually, like I don't think I am okay. Like what I just did is like what I'm doing isn't normal. It's not healthy, yet it was just a very weird moment that I kind of came to a realization of that what I was down that path and I was just like, something has got to change because this doesn't feel good anymore.
It's interesting. I mean, if I think about like my week to week, like I will try and be pretty good I'm trying to be pretty good all the time, right? But like generally Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I'm particularly good. And then Friday comes and I go, right, I've been good all week. I'm going to have this sandwich for lunch. And then Saturday morning comes and I go, okay, I've been good all week. I'm going to have this bacon sandwich for breakfast, my Saturday morning treat. So it's not unusual, right, for us all. This is kind of the mental process to managing health and diet and lifestyle in general, right? And trying to find balance, which is, be good to a point and then be bad to a point, or not bad, but, indulge to a point. So it sounds like what you were just experiencing an extreme of the thing that we all do, right? Which is, manage it, but also try and enjoy the things we enjoy and try to, not get too out of control. It sounds like you just were too controlled here. And then when you decided to lose control, you just let yourself really go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was really stuck in the all or nothing mentality. I had a really difficult time like loosening the reins a little bit. Like if I went to dinner with a friend, I would freak out if I don't know, they didn't have the salad that I wanted because they were all out. Like my go-to was always like a grilled chicken salad that I would spend $20 on and not even the dish that I actually wanted because I was afraid to eat the food.
So it sounds like we're talking about, well, when you dig down into it, it really does end up being, diet, lifestyle, diabetes or not, right? It really does end up being about a mentality and about, and I suppose in some senses about a personality type. And you would have different types of people. So you've got those types of people, for example, who, don't drink any alcohol, but then will binge and kind of black out. Then you've got those people who do drink a little bit of alcohol and kind of manage it. And that it's all really interesting. Do you see this kind of play out in your work as a dietitian?
Definitely, yeah. And especially once you add the layer of diabetes, when we have to now hyper focus on what we're eating, because that's how we calculate our medication is through counting carbs. So it's not like we can't just avoid them altogether. To some layer, we do have to kind of hyper focus on what we're eating. And it can start out very innocently of, okay, I'm not going to eat the top bun on my burger because I want to cut back a little bit on the carbs. Instead of our mentality being, I want to take that top bun off the burger because if I eat that top bun, it's going to be way too much food, and I'd rather eat the French fries instead. It's it's our mindset, it's our mentality, and it's always about the carbs, it's about the insulin, there's only so many things with diabetes that we can control. And I feel like when some people with diabetes have a certain type of personality, like you alluded to, it becomes about trying to control a disease that really can't be controlled to a point that we really want it to be.
Well, there's no perfection, right? There's
and
literally no such thing.
That's hard for people to accept.
Well, it is. I mean, it's not hard for me. If anything, I probably should try and get a little bit closer to thinking about perfection. I tend to, be a bit more up and down in terms of how much focus I have on it. And I don't count carbs. I will just look at dinner and I'll go, what does it look like? And what do I predict is the insulin dose that I need to take? And that's a pretty inexact science, but it kind of works for me. And I'll occasionally look at, if I'm comparing foods in a supermarket, I'll look at the back. Like the other day, I was looking at some wraps, and there was a whole different, a range of different types of wraps. And so I was like, okay, which ones? There was spelt, and there was wholemeal, and there was, all this range of these mountain bread wraps. And I was like, well, they all look kind of the same. I'll just go for the one that's got the lower carb. So I was on the back looking at the carbs. It's rare that I do that though. How do you, when you're coaching people around diet, how do you coach them on these types of topics?
It's all very individual because it comes down to a lot of, what has their experience been with dieting in the past? Have they been someone who's a chronic dieter where they've been on all these fad diets, almost like a Weight Watchers, Jenny Craig, whatever it is? So they don't have an innate body trust already, because they always just wanted someone to tell them exactly what to do. Tell me to eat this for breakfast, this for lunch, this for dinner. Then they get thrown in this diagnosis of diabetes and they want that same thing. Tell me to eat this, this, and that, and I'm going to have this, this, and that type of result.
They'll live forever.
Yeah. And so it's hard to, have them break down, what are their actual preferences? What are their values around food? What experiences are valuable to them? What's their reasoning behind wanting to improve their relationship with food? Depending on how they answer those questions kind of dictates where we kind of maneuver throughout the coaching program.
And do people tend to fall into, predominantly into certain types, like more pedantic and wanting to be very structured and told what they should be eating all the time? Is that more common, or is it the people like me who just do whatever they want, figure out their insulin dose, and try not to get too weighed down by it.
Yeah, there's always going to be the extremes in diabetes. There's going to be ones that, just kind of put it on the back burner, just kind of let it be there, and they're going to put their lives first. And then there's going to be the other people that their whole life just revolves around their diabetes management. And either or extreme can, impact our relationship with food. But what I typically see things come down to in terms of what really impacts someone's relationship with food and even their diagnosis is when they're really stuck in this like perfectionism mentality. It usually has something to do with their relationship to their insulin, blood sugars, diabetes. That's usually like one category is they're like obsessed, with checking their blood sugar, looking at their Dexcom, not taking more than X amount of units of insulin. If they see an arrow, a certain number, they just like can't handle it, and they just start spiraling out of control. Another area is exercise. A lot of people use exercise as a way to manipulate their blood sugars. And the other thing is food. Those are really the three, about insulin, exercise, food. Those are like the three things that we can really quote unquote control with diabetes. So then some people take it to either extreme there.
So what are the types of steps that you're taking with someone who is overly or unnecessarily pedantic?
It's a lot of mindset work. It's a lot of meeting them with the facts. So if, for example, someone is restricting some sort of food, let's say bread, because that's bread is very common. So they're telling me that, right now they're eating like little to no carbs. So if they're eating little to no carbs, I ask them why it's important that they want to eat more carbs. A lot of times, like figuring out what their big why is a really big motivator for them. So a lot of times it might be like their family motivators, like I want to be able to go out to dinner with my husband and not start crying at the dinner table because there's nothing for me to eat. Or I want to be able to go to a wedding, a birthday party, happy hour with my friends and, not order the grilled chicken salad like I would. They want to be able to enjoy food and travel and do all those things. So what we do, especially with food, is I have them make a list of foods that give them the most amount of anxiety and foods that give them the least amount of anxiety. So what we do, once they have that list, and I have them rank it from like least to most, is then I have them write out why. Why is that food giving you such an emotional response? Why are, I don't know, mangoes freaking you out? A lot of the times, it's the carbs. This has carbs, that has carbs, too many carbs, I can't eat that, too much sugar, too much this, too much that. So then in the next column, we write out what we can do to ease our way in. So if mangoes are really scaring you, we can talk about, okay, instead of eating like a whole mango, can we try a quarter mango? Can we pair it with some other foods to help slow down that rise that might happen if you were to eat a mango by itself? So we talk a lot about different strategies that we can use. Then we also talk about different dosing strategies, food pairing, all that stuff. So they learn how insulin actually works, how digestion actually works. And then we're able to look at things through like an experimental lens rather than like, I got this response and that was bad, so I am never doing it again. And I find like making the list of foods is really eye-opening because for most of the time, all those foods have the same exact reason why we're avoiding it. And I think it's really eye-opening for clients to see, like, you can easily think of at least 20, 30 front, back of paper of all the foods that we're mentally restricting without us really even thinking about it.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And when the individuals are first starting out with you, are they coming with a really broad range of different reasons? Is it weight loss? Are they kind of showing signs of ill health in some way? Is that generally the types of individuals that are approaching you initially?
So I try to make it very apparent that I don't practice from a weight centric standpoint. So with that means I practice from a weight neutral standpoint. So I don't even ask any of my clients what their current weight is, because I don't care. That is not going to be the outcome of our time together. So we focus about the how and the why they're making certain food choices, the how and the why, they're getting stuck in certain areas of their management, rather than, we could do all these health promoting things, right? We could be sleeping better, eating better, exercising more consistently. And then we step on the scale and we don't get the result that we want. And then we go back to, okay, well, what can I control? My insulin, exercise, and food. So instead of the scale being like the dictator of success, we work about, how their energy levels are feeling, how energized are they feeling during the day, how are they feeling overall in their management. So yeah, we don't focus on weight. So I do have people that come to me for weight loss, but I let them know, that won't be an outcome. That it might be, I can't guarantee that you're going to lose 10 pounds.
Right?
It could definitely be, but it's not something that I focus on. I'm not going to have them weighing themselves weekly. And it's a lot of my clients have gone through some type of, traumatic experience with weight. A lot of them have experienced weight stigma, especially in the diabetes community. I've had a handful of clients who have been misdiagnosed for type 2 because they have met certain BMI criteria. And they were misdiagnosed for, some of them 6 months, some of them 2 years, one even 10 years misdiagnosed. And it is incredibly scary, and it makes it really hard for them to trust their healthcare professionals, to trust themselves, the body that they're in, this body that's betrayed them. So it's a lot of healing in ways that just don't revolve around the scale.
And I imagine by the time they're getting to you, or the fact that they've even reached out to a dietitian, is in itself a massive step, right? There's some motivation there to actually make a change, which I imagine is in itself is a very helpful part of the process.
Yeah, I hear a lot from people that apply to work with me is that it's almost like a breath of fresh air, because I'm not like the dietitian in their clinic. I'm not there to tell them eat this, not that type of thing. And I'm there to meet them kind of where they're at. And I want them to feel empowered, whether they're wanting to eat a salad or wanting to eat pizza. I want to teach them how to do that, why to do that, and really change their whole outlook and mentality on both their relationship with their diagnosis and with their relationship with food.
So where did this style come from, this approach that you have? Where did this come from?
So I've been a dietitian for almost, it's crazy, I've been almost a dietitian for 5 years now. It went by so quick, but a lot of it was my own personal experience as a patient in healthcare, seeing the education that I was given from my own care team, how that has clearly impacted my life, my diagnosis, my relationship with food. And then as I grew to be a professional in the field, I then saw another side of the missing gaps in the healthcare field. I myself was seeing on a slow day anywhere from 10 patients. I would like try to squeeze in 15 or 17 in a day, an 8-hour day. So for me to have the relationship building, the ability to really dig deep, the follow-up with people, I wasn't able to have that because we just live in such a broken system. And I also think a lot of the traditional approaches to diabetes management is severely outdated. And I knew if I ever went to like a hospital clinic or something, I was gonna break all the rules because I don't live by their like cookie cutter guidelines. So I was probably, it wasn't gonna work out for either of us anyway. So I like to give a really realistic spin on what it's actually like to live with type 1 diabetes.
Now, I imagine it definitely helps having type 1 diabetes to start with. Are you seeing nutrition and the dietitian industry all move to this approach of being more considered in terms of, it's not just about you have to eat this and that, but about, as you say, meeting people where they're at? Is that a trend in the industry?
I think it's definitely an up and coming trend. The term is usually either intuitive or mindful eating are, common taglines that seem to be thrown around. But a lot of times when people are selling intuitive eating now, they're selling it as intuitive eating, but weight loss at the same time. And it's really difficult to tell someone they're going to improve their relationship with food if they're still restricting food.
Yeah, fantastic. So tell us a bit about your enjoyment of the job. Tell us a little bit about you in the job. Like, what do you like? What don't you like? Give us a bit of insight into your own personal experience.
So I actually never thought I would be here doing this ever. It just, all these opportunities kind of just landed on my lap somehow. Again, the universe works in very mysterious ways. I was working all different areas of nutrition and I never really felt fulfilled. And I always talk about diabetes to everyone that I meet. So I was just like, one day I already had a very big following on Instagram. And I was just like, you know what, I'm going to pivot this and just start telling people about my diabetes. And if they want to listen, great. If they don't want to listen, then see ya. But I really never thought I would be here. So my least favorite thing is literally anything on the business spectrum. I hate anything that involves like payroll, scheduling, taxes. I can't. That's like, I'm like, you know what? I could talk to my clients all day long. That is like my favorite part of what I do is being able to now connect with type 1s. I even work with family members, so parents, caregivers, their children. And that to me is like the most like fulfilling work, is being able to actually do the one-on-one work, because hearing the story, seeing the transformation, it is something that I don't take for granted. I understand and recognized how incredibly lucky that I am. And literally, I think almost all my clients have like seen me cry on camera because I just get so emotional about it. So
what's that? Where's that coming from?
So I am an incredibly empathetic person. So my reaction to literally everything is to cry. So if I'm angry, sad, happy, I just cry. So if I see them having like, this really, we dig really deep. So if they're having this like really big monumental breakthrough and they're crying, I'm like right there with them and I'm crying too.
That's really sweet. So that, yeah, does that come at a cost though? That being so empathetic, does it? I imagine it would be quite draining to some extent, especially if you're supporting people most days and you're having long days, and if you're doing back-to-back sessions. Does it take its toll?
So it does and it doesn't. I do have to prioritize like my own self-care in many ways, but a lot of things that really get me down, not so much like any of my client work, but more just like the social media presence. Social media can be a really dark place. And I hear a lot of sad stories from people not being able to afford their insulin, their supplies, all of that stuff. And it breaks my heart that not only in like the US, but all over the world, people are experiencing such stigma, such inability to have access to care. It's sad. It's incredibly sad.
Yeah, I can imagine. So that's interesting that I think it takes a special person to be able to give so much to people, energy wise, and be so there for them, and not like let it drain you. I think that's really impressive.
Yeah. It's not as easy as it looks sometimes. There's definitely days where I cry to my boyfriend. I sit on the couch and just like cry with my dogs. But I try to think back, and for me, like my biggest motivator is wishing I could be the person I wish I had 10 years ago. And in a lot of ways, me doing all this work is almost like healing my own trauma that I've experienced throughout my whole diagnosis.
And that's quite common, isn't it? Well, you hear it, it's maybe even a bit cliche that therapists getting into, not that I'm saying you're a therapist, but I think in that whole world of, what do you call it, support, or no, I suppose I use the term therapy, but it's common that people get into those areas because they have a personal interest and there's something that they're looking to improve in themselves, and therefore they jump into a world and then end up actually becoming really good at supporting other people along the similar journeys.
Yeah, and I think the qualities that I have are great, because a lot of people may have, they might be experts in diabetes, right? They might have read all the books that are out there about type 1 diabetes. They might have great A1Cs themselves. And especially now, there's a lot of like coaches kind of coming up and out into the field. But what makes it, I think, incredibly special to me is I not only have that personal experience, but I've gone through like 6.5 years of school for this. So I put a lot on the line between like my student loans and all of that stuff to, really dedicate a big chunk of my life to nutrition and understanding the ins and outs of all of that. So I think it meshes really well to have both the personal experience, but also that professional aspect as well.
And is it ongoing for you? Are you continuing to study? Is there, where do you look to next for developing your skills and your knowledge in this space?
So I have to take continuing education in order to keep my licensure. So okay. I'm always taking continuing education, usually revolving around diabetes, also continuing education around being a business owner. But I have a couple of ideas about where I see myself going yet, but I'm not quite ready to share that yet.
That's exciting. And what about your personal journey with regards to food and diet and nutrition? Where are you at the moment?
So I have a beautiful memory, and I bring this up to most of my clients. And last year was the first time my boyfriend and I moved in together. And there was like this whole couch saga. Our couch didn't arrive by the time we moved in, and we were like sitting on the ground, just like laughing with like a TV and like, you know, the dogs. And we're like we're in a new town. We don't really know what's around. And the only thing that was open was like this ice cream place. And it's like 8:30, 9 o'clock at night. My boyfriend's like, let's go for ice cream. And I was just like, okay. In the past, I probably would have gotten so upset that he would have asked me such a daring question at 9 o'clock at night. Like, how dare you ask me to eat ice cream so close to bedtime? Don't you know that's going to mess up my blood sugar like 6 hours from now because of all the fat? Or I didn't go to the gym today, so like I don't have that like sensitivity working in my favor. But instead, I just said yes, and I don't even remember what my blood sugar was that night. But what I do remember is my boyfriend and I literally sitting on the ground with our little pints of ice cream and like nothing else in our apartment. And for me, that is just such a beautiful memory, because had that happened 3-4 years ago, it would have been a completely different story.
That's a really cool story to wrap up on. It's almost lunchtime here in Sydney, and all this talk about food, and it's Friday as well. So I'm all I can think about now is going to get my Friday pat on the back sandwich.
You definitely deserve it, and then have one for me too, or a side of fries.
Thank you so much for your time, Amanda.
You're welcome.
It's been really great to chat.